Hello friends, Kat Bohm. Many moments more often of mindfulness. Today what I want to talk about is ice and water. In the traditional teachings of the Buddha, water or nature has been used a lot around an analogy or metaphor of the mind. And I would not say it's just within Buddhist teachings, it's just what I'm quoting. So when we think of ice, it's hard, it's rigid, right? It's I don't know, it's a block of ice, it's an ice cube. When I think living here in northern Canada in our winters, ice on the street, again, hard, slippery. Now this analogy of ice can be like when our mind is very stuck. And stuck in the Buddhist terminology would be clinging. So we're stuck with something. It's like the mind has congealed with. The mind then becomes very rigid with. This could be around opinions, biases, preferences, ideas, how we relate to thoughts, feelings. We become a bit rigid. Have you noticed this? Do you know when your mind feels rigid? Ice, hard. Now this is natural. It happens to all of us, any time of the day, any day of the week. What the practice is, as the Buddha taught, as many faith traditions shared, is to become more water-like, more fluid, ice to water. Now, first off, for me, when I notice that my mind has become rigid, it's not just the mind. My body becomes rigid, becomes tight, is holding, maybe even my breath. So ice to water could also be relaxing into the body. Breathing deeply. Grounded. Resourced. Connected. I've mentioned many times that the body is truly the gateway to present moment awareness, to feeling here, right here. So we start to melt the ice by returning to the body. And then we might have a bit more resolve or a little bit more space to notice where the mind feels a bit rigid. So again, if this is the brainstem and our brain, right, when we get ignited, when we get triggered, right, it almost feels like the brain gets a bit agitated. We spoke a little bit about our primitive brain, fight, flight, freeze, assessing. This also is entangled or within our nervous system. So it's not just the body, it would be the nervous system and the mind. Maybe all a little bit tight, heightened, alerted. Again, I'll repeat, we start in the body. Grounding, relaxing, settling. And then how do we very gently persuade the mind that it's okay? For me, to slowly melt ice to water when there is something going on internally within thoughts or emotions, it's nice to check in. Just kind of ask, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you sure that's what they said? So teasing apart perception. And sometimes just being with a difficult state, kind of caring for this state of mind, a feeling, a thought, a trigger point, an association, can slowly melt. Melt the nervous system, soothe the body. And as though then the mind just slowly relaxes, has a bit more ease, more space, more fluidity. In my experience, this is a true process. It doesn't happen quickly. And sometimes if we're in a work meeting, if we're with family members, colleagues or friends, and we get a little triggered, we get a little bit destabilized, we can feel that we contract contract, pardon me, but we might not have the time right there to resource. And so I offer, when you can, to kind of return to that state and check in. What happened there? And if you have time, maybe it's just even reading a news notification, something on your phone that triggers you, post-Zoom meeting, an interaction, and you feel a little bit, as I say, tight, ice-like. How can you slowly invite fluidity, melting, calmness, and care to what is happening? I want to remind you that that is the present moment. That's what's happening. Maybe we're slightly triggered. We're reactive. We're on high alert. Something's kind of bothering us. It's okay. The practice is to show up for that moment with what I say, care, compassion, kindness. That's what's going to melt the ice. It's not trying to fight it, not trying to figure it out, not trying to justify it. Care for it. Really see it as it is. A moment of something that's uncomfortable. A moment, as the Buddha would say, of suffering. Now, of course, what I'm going to say is check this out for yourself. A big part of our practice of awareness is beginning to notice when we feel ice-like, tight, rigid, reacting to. Do you see what I'm doing? Yeah, moving away from present moment. That's awareness. And then how little by little can we resource into the body? Start in the body. Maybe with breath. Inviting the nervous system, calmness. And then beginning to reframe that relationship to what has triggered you. Feelings, thoughts, stimulus, association. Can you show up to care for it? And will that slowly melt ice to water? This is a practice. It's not about being perfect. It's about practicing. So practice in your unique way. Absorbing some of these teachings and practice in your unique way.